Hello everyone. So the IIM Bangalore UG paper just around the corner. The last week before the last weekdays before it does come across, and I'm sure all of you must have gone through the sample paper that they shared. Right now, a lot of things have been discussed, talked about with respect to the sample paper. But if I look at the QA section, there were 30 questions, and the maximum number of questions were from one single topic which had the maximum number of questions was not differentiation, was not integration, was not algebra, was not logs. It was actually data interpretation. So in the sample paper, there were two sets which had four questions each. One was a pie chart, one was a table, and typically doability of those. In terms of level of complexity or the question asked, most of the questions were one-step questions. Now, one-step question I do not mean that the calculation might have been easy, but at least in terms of getting the value, you did not have to find out many intermediate values, right? So today we talk about data interpretation. Data interpretation, very good. Yeah. Here we look at the kind of questions that are asked. Number one, and the commonly asked, or the common types of what do you call it? Charts or the representation of data sets. When I talk of data interpretation, obviously there are two parts to it. One is data, the other is interpretation. Data that is given to you will be typically in one of two forms. One, the data could be tabular. So there is a table which simply gives you the numbers. For example, if I say in the year 2023, 2024, 2025, there are say four companies A, B, C, D. All of these companies sell the same product in the market, and these are the only four companies that sell that product. I am sharing with you the information on sales, which is in rupees thousands. So this becomes the heading of the table. This becomes the unit of the data that is given to me. Suppose the sales for A is 50,000, increases to 60, goes up to 70. Suppose for B, it is 70, decreases to 65, goes down to 55. 55. For C, suppose it starts from 60, goes up to 65, and then goes up to 75,000. For D, it is more of an up down. Starts from say 50 or say 40. We have 70 sugar in this one. Probably we will have a better room. Then increases to say 80, comes down to 70. So this, now I have a table in front of me. This table gives me the sales in rupees thousand of four products A, B, C, D for 3 years, 2023, 24 and 25. Tabular data. Again, there is no trend that this table will tell me per se. There are numbers, I make calculations on the data that is given to me. The data could also be pictorial. For pictorial data, for pictorial data, the data that is used could be of different forms. For example, I could have a line chart. Something like this. Different lines representing different values. I could have a pie chart or a bar chart. So this is a line chart. I could have a bar chart. So there are different bars representing values for different products in different years. For example, we look at each of them, examine each of them actually. Or there could be a pie chart which shows me the split of the market division for a product in a year. line, bar, pi are the most commonly used charts. There could also be a case where more than one type of chart is used to represent data, so mixed graph is used. There could also be cases where any sort of a geometrical figure is used and it is divided into parts. For example, I draw a triangle, a rectangle, and then divide into smaller parts, each area representing one value. So that can also be done. In terms of pictures, I would have different representations. These three are the most common ones. Now, if I look at questions, before you answer questions, it is always a good idea to very clearly read the data that is given. So, what does the data talk about? What is the title of the data? What are the units given? And therefore, I precisely know the kind of information that is being presented, because the questions can always ask me information that is not derivable from the data that is given. And that kind of a question is very common. It is very frequently put up in the exam just to see how well you are able to figure out what the data is talking about. Now, if in terms of questions, these are some basic sort of questions that might come across. You might come across and try to touch upon each of them. The reason I'm listing them first is so that our table does not get deleted. Yeah, so logistical issue. So come and trying to draw the table again. 2023, 24, and 25. We had 4 companies, A, B, C, D, selling products with A starting from 50 going up to 60 and then 70. B starting from 70 going to 65 and then going down to 55. C starting from 60 going up to 65, then to say 70. D starting from 70 going up to 80 coming back to 70. Yeah, so this is the data that is given to me. Now, the most basic question will simply ask you to pick a number. And I am calling that question a maximum minimum based question. I will come to comparison based questions later, but now I'm just saying a maximum or minimum based question. It simply says what is the maximum sales for A, or in which year did A have the maximum sales? Rupees 1000. In which year did A have the maximum sales? So I look at A, I realize that this row talks about A. Among these, this is the largest number, so A had the maximum sales in 2025. This is a row-based question for one value. I could also have in which product had the highest sales in 2024. So this becomes a column-based question. 2024, I see that the highest sales is here, which is D. So D had the highest sales in 2024. The questions could be row-based or column-based. Right now, I am just asking you which is one of the higher or the lower values. We could also have a grouping and I have to compare a higher or larger value. For example, if I say which is higher, the sales for A and B in 2023 or the sales for C and D in 2025. Which is higher, sales for A and B in 2023 or sales for C and D in 2025. So I add this is 120, this is 140, so this is a higher value. Basic maximum minimum based questions where you're just picking data from the table, might have to add in, but basically just comparing to see which is a higher or a lower value. I could also have a question that talks to me about the total values. For example, what is the sales for A in the 3 years put together? The sales for A in 3 years put together, let's say the sum of the three numbers, 50 plus 60, 70, which is 180 rupees, 1000 rupees. What is the total sales in the year 2023? 50 plus 70, 120 plus 60, 180 plus 250,000 rupees. Right? And the moment I have a total, I could talk about averages. And therefore, I could have an average based question, which goes on to say average sales for A in the given years. Average sales for A in the given 3 years. What would be the answer here? Because I have a total, I will be able to find the average. The average is nothing but average or mean is nothing but sum of observations upon a number of observations. In this case, if I have to find out the average for A, the sum of observations is 180, and there are 3 years that we are looking at. Therefore, the number of observations becomes 3. Average sales becomes 60. I could also ask you the average sales of the 4 companies for the year 2024, for example. Again, add, in this case, divide by 4, right? Since we are talking of average, it might not be a bad idea to talk about 2 other terms. Average is mean. The other 2 terms which talk about measures of central tendency are median. Questions on these have been fewer, and mode. Median is the central value. So if you arrange the data set in ascending or descending order, the central value physically is called the median. So if I say the sales for C, for example, 60, 65, 70, the median value will become 65. Mode is the most frequent value, the value that appears maximum number of times. So if I say what will be the mode of this entire data, 65 is there twice, 60 is there twice, 70 is there 4 times, 5 times, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So clearly 70 becomes the mode of this entire data. Most frequent value is mode. The central value physically is the median, right? Again, there have been very few instances, if at all, wherein the DI set a median mode question has been asked, but just in case, you should know what it is. We could have questions based on sum and difference. The most obvious question based on sum will be total sales for A. Sales for A in the year 2025, a sum based question. Or I could say what is the total sales for A in 2023 and D in 2025, a sum based question. Similarly, I could have a difference based question where I say what is the difference of average sales for A in 23 and 24 and average sales for B in 24 and 25. So we have to find a difference between 2 values. What are these 2 values? These 2 values are averages. And average of what? Average of sales of A in 23 and 24. A in 23 was 50, 24 was 60, so 50 plus 60 by 2, which is 55. And B in 24 and 25. B in 24 was 65, 25 is 50, 65 plus 55 by 2, which is 60. I have to find the difference between these 2 numbers. Difference does not typically include the negative side. When we say difference, we're typically looking at the value and not the positive or the negative sign. And therefore, the value of the difference will come out to 60 minus 55, which is 5. A difference-based question, so to say. Then comes the interesting part, or the part where the mistake starts to happen. These are questions which are based on rate, growth rate, change rate, rate of decline. Just to be sure of these terms, one term that I am using is growth rate, GROWTH. Growth rate or growth percentage. What is the difference between these 2? How is growth rate different from growth percentage? Rate and percentage are the same thing. There is no difference. This is the same, right? Second, if I say growth rate and versus change rate, and therefore, suppose the third term is rate of decline. How are these 3 terms different? Growth rate versus change rate. In growth rate, we will exclusively look for values which have increased. Growth means increase, decline means decrease. So if I say growth rate for A, I am looking at 50 going on to 60, 60 going on to 70. Growth. Growth rate for B does not happen because it only decreases. So for B, we will talk of rate of decline. Went from 60 to 75, went from 65 to 55. Rate of decline happened for B. What is change rate? Change talks about only the value. It does not talk about the sign. So when I say change rate, whether it is increase or decrease does not matter. The only thing is the percentage change is important. Only the magnitude of change matters. The sign does not matter. Right? Now, how do we calculate change percentage? Change rate or change percentage, as we know from the topic percentage, is given by change percentage is given by final value minus initial value upon initial value into 100. This is the formula for change percentage. So if a value goes from 20 to 30, we calculate the change, which is 10, divide by the starting value, because any percentage increase happens on the starting value. And since it's a percentage, we multiply by 100. Now, in case of data, specifically data that is based on year, I will calculate the change percent over the previous year, right? And therefore, if I say yearly change, or suppose if I have to calculate growth rate for A in the year 2024. When we talk of yearly growth and we are trying to find out the growth for a year, please understand that that growth will always be compared with the previous year. So growth rate for 2024 for A is the percentage increase that A sees from the year 23 to 24. The growth rate for any year is the percentage is from the previous year. And therefore, for 2024, the growth rate will be 60 final value, which is the value in the year for which you are calculating growth or growth rate. Initial value 50 upon initial value into 100. This comes out to 10 by 50 into 100 or 1 by 5, which is 20%. Right? Now the second question that I have is, this is a growth rate that happens for a year, year on year इसको बोलते हैं. Any finance student here or a commerce student will know why year on year. There could also be a growth rate that is over a period of time. For example, if I ask you what is the growth rate for A, growth rate for A from the year 2023 to the year 2025. This is easier. Easier in the sense I don't have to know anything to calculate this, because here I have been given the starting and the ending period. The starting period is 23, initial value. Ending period is 25, final value. So I say 70 final value minus 50 initial value upon initial value into 100. This will be 20 upon 5, 20 upon 50, 40%. So the growth rate, this is not the annual growth rate, annual is yearly. Growth rate for A from 20 to 25 is 40%. Yeah. Next question. Difference की जो बात करेंगे, what is the difference in this word and this word? What is the difference between the word growth and growth rate? Growth and growth rate. इन दोनों में क्या difference होगा? Remember, what will be the growth for A in the year 2024? Growth is not a percentage value. Growth is in terms of the data given. So when I say growth, the sales for A in 2023 was 50,000 rupees. In 24 is 60,000 rupees. So the growth for A in 2024 will simply be 60 minus 50, 10,000 rupees. The growth rate is a percentage. So the growth rate for the same product for the same period will be 10 upon initial value 15 to 120%. Growth has the same unit as the data. Growth rate is a percentage value. And therefore, if you look at it, you'll realize that the growth, I'm talking about A only, for A in 24 is the same as growth for A in 25. In 24 also it grew by 10,000, in 25 it also grew by 10,000. But the growth rate for A in 24 is not equal to growth rate for A in 25. Because here the growth of 10 happened on a base of 50. Here it happened on a base of 60. 50 to 60, 60 to 70. So since the base changes, the growth rate is changing every year, the growth is not changing. Right? In a line chart, if you look at it, a line chart captures growth for you, not growth rate, not in that sense. For example, if I draw a line chart for A, I draw a line for A for the year 23, 24 and 25. For 23, the sales is 50. For 24, the sales is 60. For 25, the sales is 70. I will get a straight line passing at 50, 60, 70 for the 3 years. So a line chart pictorially represents growth for me. Looking at the slope of the line, I can say which product has a higher growth, which has a lower growth. Growth rate is a different story as far as the line chart is concerned. वो calculate करना पड़ेगा, visually नहीं दिखता. Then we come on to SAGR, CAGR. SAGR, CAGR are basically growth rates that are annualized, in the sense that SAGR is simple growth rate. Simple annual growth rate. And therefore CAGR is nothing but compound annual growth rate. SAGR is similar to simple interest. CAGR is similar to compound interest, right? So what is the idea behind annualized growth rates? If we look at, for example, suppose census होता है हम लोग का 10 साल में एक बार. अब census में मुझे एक साल की population पता है, then I know the population after 10 years. So I know the growth for the entire period. Yearly कितना change हो वो तो पता नहीं. So what we can do is we can find out the annual growth rate by taking an average in that sense, right? Depending on how I calculate the rate, I could have a SAGR or a CAGR. So basically, this annual growth rate will be the rate जो अगर हर साल repeat होता तो हम लोग को first और 10th year से same population मिल जाती, ठीक है? Now how do I calculate SAGR? SAGR is simply the average rate, average of the overall rate. For example, if I say what will be SAGR for A from 2023 to 25. So what I'll do is I'll first calculate the growth rate and then take the average. What is the growth rate? From 23 to 25, growth rate was 20 upon 50 to 100. अब इसका मुझे average लेना है. So I'll divide by the number. What is the number that I should divide by? 3 or 2? There are 3 years that we are talking about, but you have to understand the change happens twice. If there are 3 time periods, तो चेंज फर्स्ट से सेकंड में होगा, फिर सेकंड से थर्ड में. चेंज तो 2 बार ही हुआ ना यार. तो यहाँ पे एक रेट इधर लगेगा, फिर दूसरा रेट इधर लगेगा. So the change that happens is only 2 times and divide by 2. तो ये आएगा 40%, 40 by 2 is 20%. इसका मतलब एनुअल ग्रोथ रेट जो है वो 20% का था. तो जो पॉपुलेशन थी, सॉरी, द सेल्स था that increased by 20% in the first year and the same increase happened in the second year, and therefore we reached from 50 to 70. SAGR. You simply divide, you calculate the growth rate divided by the number of changes that have happened, periods that have gone by, gives you the average rate. CAGR में क्या होता है? CAGR में again very minuscule chances that you are asked to calculate this value. अगर होगा भी तो बहुत बड़ा approximation होगा, या फिर it will be given in the question जिसको use करके आपको solution निकालना होगा. CAGR निकालने में very, I don't think there will be a question because it becomes a, you need a calculator and all of that for this. CAGR में I will simply use the formula for compound interest. I will say the final year value is 70, amount, initial year value is 50, principal into 1 plus R upon 100. Again, there are two time periods, 23 to 24 first, 24 to 25 second. So raised to power 2. Solve for R, the value of R becomes your CAGR. So this becomes the compound rate at which if 50 grows in two time periods, it will reach 70. SAGR, CAGR, simple annual growth rate, compound annual growth rate. SAGR or the average growth rate is something, if it does not say S or C in front of annual growth rate, the average growth rate will typically be SAGR. SAGR is a question that has been asked in a lot of exams earlier. Finally, the concept of market share. Now, this is a term that we, I'm sure, would have used in different contexts. फोन लेने जाते हैं तो भी हमें याद आता है मार्केट शेयर किसका ज्यादा है. जो एप्पल लेते हैं एप्पल बोलते हैं, वैसे वन प्लस का सबसे ज्यादा हो गया. उसका ऐड आता था किसका, पार्ले जी का, तो वो था दुनिया का सबसे ज्यादा बिकने वाला बिस्किट. It sells the maximum number of biscuits, Parle Ji. So I can say market share उसका बहुत ज्यादा है. Right? Market share, as the name suggests, is the percentage of the total that the product represents. Right? So if I say in the year 2023, what was the market share for A? Now I know that in the year 2023, the total market size was 250, out of which 50 was A. Therefore, the market share for A in 2023, market share for A in 23 would be the sales for A upon the total market. Market share is a percentage, 20%. Similarly, for B will be 70 upon 250 into 100. Clearly, the sum of market percentages should be 100%. These are some terms that you might come across when you are looking at data interpretation. Another term that you might see, just a second, is something called as per capita. Per capita is nothing but divided by per person actually. So if I say production per capita or sales per capita, this is nothing but sales upon total population. Sales per capita. Chalo. Basis this, if we try to attempt a couple of sets maybe. So this is the, okay, sorry, there is a comparison of ratio question as well. So typically this will say growth rate. So which product saw the highest growth rate and in which year? So basically I'm comparing the growth rate for each company for each year. So that kind of questions again would be questions which might take more amount of time in calculation, but conceptually based on ratios and comparisons. So this is a question that I have. I will read it out for you if reading it is a problem. The question says CUET is in your entrance examination for the Central University across India. The following table, this table gives me the number of students who applied for the exam in 2022 from each state. So the state wise UP, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh is given, and in each stream. So from UP there were non-medical students, medical, commerce, and humanities students, and others for after that. So if I say from Haryana, non-medical students were 360. That is what the table is telling me. Use the data table to answer the questions that follow. So the first question says, what is the difference of average number of students who applied from medical and commerce from Uttar Pradesh and the average number of students from non-medical and humanities from Gujarat? So first of all, difference of average. So I have to find two values. जिसका मैं difference लूँगा. What are the two values? Average of students from medical and commerce from Uttar Pradesh. So I look at the medical and commerce students from Uttar Pradesh. That will be one value, and the average of number of students from non-medical and humanities from Gujarat. So from UP I'll find out one average, from Gujarat I'll find out one average, and then subtract the two. That is the question that has been asked. Now my further question is, should I calculate the totals of each of these states and each of these streams upfront? पहले टोटल कैलकुलेट करके रख लेता हूँ, एंड में बार बार कैलकुलेट नहीं करना पड़ेगा. हाँ. Now my question is, should I calculate the average upfront, the total upfront? कि पूरी रो और पूरी कॉलम का मैंने टोटल पहले ही कैलकुलेट किया. फॉर एग्जांपल आई एम बैंगलोर में जो टेबल आई थी परसेंटेज ऑफ बॉयज और वो, so should I calculate the number of boys in those upfront? देखो, as far as possible do not do it unless you are forced by the question to do that, because हो सकता है the totals that I calculate might not be part of question. Secondly, there is a possibility that out of the 4 questions, 2 questions are such जहाँ पे मुझे total calculate नहीं करना है, उसमें basic yes I have to use fewer values, और 2 में करना है, and my attempt is such जहाँ पे मैं DI के सारे questions नहीं करने वाला. I am attempting other questions as well. So in that case, what I will do is I will use the 2 questions जहाँ पे totals calculate नहीं करें, they will take lesser time. I will attempt them and move on. So what I am trying to say is, unless you are forced by the question to find out the totals for rows and columns, do not do that. As long as possible, try to solve the questions without getting into that extra calculation. The moment you come across a question जहाँ वो बोल रहा है total calculate करो, तो या तो सिर्फ उस रो और उस कॉलम का करो जिसका पूछ रहा है, या फिर आगे देख लो how many questions are there which want you to do the same. अगर एक क्वेश्चन है जहाँ मुझे पूरी हर रो का कैलकुलेट करना है, टोटल हर कॉलम का कैलकुलेट करना है, फिर उस पे ऑपरेशन करना है, it might take a lot of time. जो लास्ट क्वेश्चन होगा मेरा, जब सब कुछ हो जाएगा तब मैं उसमें वापस आऊंगा, वरना मैं छोड़ दूंगा. You know, 3 questions with lesser time is better than 4 questions with a lot of time invested. Here, for example, कुछ ज्यादा करना नहीं है. Medical and commerce from Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh medical and commerce 630 plus 210. इसका एवरेज तो 840 upon 2, 420. Then is non-med and humanities Gujarat. Non-med humanities Gujarat. So 950 plus 630 upon 2, which is 1580. So 790. इसका डिफरेंस लिया, 370 becomes the answer. है ना? या मैं क्या करता, मैं डिफरेंस निकाल के एवरेज निकाल लेता. 630 plus 210, 950 और 630 का डिफरेंस निकालना है. देखो 630 तो कैंसिल हो जाएगा, बचा 950 minus 210. 950 minus 210 is 740. इसका एवरेज निकालना था, तो 370 यहाँ से भी आ सकता है. क्वेश्चन नंबर 1. Look at this question there. Same data. Now it says number of students applied for CUET for humanities in Haryana. Humanities in Haryana will be one value. Is what percentage of students who applied for CUET from others in Rajasthan. Again, others in Rajasthan is one value. कोई टोटल करने की जरूरत नहीं है, एक एक वैल्यू उठा के परसेंटेज बताना है. आंसर फॉर दिस. Answer for this question. Hmm. 66.67%. Okay. So here he says CUET from humanities, Haryana, humanity 320 is what percentage of students who applied for CUET others in Rajasthan. Rajasthan others is 480. So this is what percentage of 480. Whenever you're writing a percentage, please understand percentage is given value upon total value into 100. अब जो base में value है वो हमेशा it will be written after the word of or than. The number is how much percent more than. जो भी than या of के बाद है वो value जाएगी denominator में. जिस value का question पूछा वो जाएगा numerator में. So the number of students from humanities are around 320 upon what percentage of Rajasthan others 480 into 100. 160 से divide किया 2 by 3 और 2 by 3 होता है 66.67. मार्क कर दिया ऑप्शन 4. फर्दर एक क्वेश्चन देखते हैं. ये देखो. The number of students who applied for CUET in humanities, अब पूरी की बात हो रही है, is how much more than the number of students who applied for commerce. So basically humanities का टोटल और कॉमर्स का टोटल इसका डिफरेंस पूछा है, is how much more. परसेंटेज की बात नहीं, लेकिन थैंकफुली. Yeah. Any answers? Any answer to this one? Okay, एक आ भी गया. Very nice. अच्छा, समझ गया. हाँ. क्यों हो गए? हाँ. Humanities, commerce. Humanities का टोटल निकालेंगे. Sorry. Okay. 480 plus 320. 7800. 1440. 2040, 2070. 21, 2800. फिर कॉमर्स का टोटल निकालेंगे. 200, 830, 1530, 610, 1680, 2280, 23, 2500. The difference comes out to 300. Because I am not asked the total of any other row or column, I do not get into that. जिसका पूछा उसका निकाला, and basis this, we have been able to answer 3 questions so far. Fourth question then. The number of students who applied for CUET in humanities, जो हमने पहले निकाला था, this number was 2800. अब देखो, at any point if I am calculating the row or sum totals, I will obviously not waste them also. अगर मैंने कुछ total निकाला तो मैं I will obviously write it down in my notes or rough work जो भी है, question paper जो भी है, obviously write that value down so I don't have to calculate that value again. Is how much percent more than the number of students in commerce? Commerce was 2500. Answer for this? So basically it is asking me 2800 is how much percent more than 2500? So 2800 is 300 more than 2500 because that is the percentage I have to calculate, that goes in the numerator. और फिर मैंने देखा the word than या of, than यहाँ पे लिखा है, than के बाद कौन सी वैल्यू है? Number of students in commerce is just 2500. This goes in the denominator. 300 upon 2500 multiplied by 100. 0, 0, 0, 0 cancel. 25 4s are 100. 3 4s are 12%. So my answer here becomes 12%. Question 4. एक और क्वेश्चन देखें इस पे. Okay. Question 5 then says, it was later discovered that 20% of the students who had applied in commerce were actually humanities. And they made this correction. What would be the percentage increase in the number of students in humanities in Madhya Pradesh? So basically, जो commerce के students थे 2500, उसमें later it was realized that 20% are actually humanities students. So 20% of 2500, 20% is 1 by 5. It's another 500. So 500 of these students are actually from here. So if that change is made, humanity commerce में सिर्फ 2000 students रह जाएंगे और यहाँ पे 3300 students हो जाएंगे. बोल रहे what will be the percentage change in मध्य प्रदेश? यहाँ पे what will be the increase? Now clearly I have not been given the breakup of this redistribution. मुझे ये नहीं बोला है that the redistribution happens in the proportion of the existing values or the redistribution happens equally for each state. ऐसा कुछ तो बोला नहीं है. तो जो 500 का चेंज हुआ है मैं कहाँ ऐड करूँ वो भी नहीं पता है मेरे को. And therefore the question cannot be determined. And therefore it is critical that while you are attempting an LRDI का set, you ensure that you properly read. What do you read? You read the heading, the units of the data to properly understand what is it asking, how the data is distributed, right? It is very common to have these kind of questions. We do not actually have an answer in exams as well. Now, if I look at different types of charts that are there, there could be a line chart. Again, not getting into how to solve these questions, but the pie chart is इसमें मैं explain करना चाहता हूँ. Line chart is as good as a table. जो values है वो table में लिखे, I can calculate values. There is something called as a bar chart. For example, इस bar chart की अगर बात करूँ, it has 3 marks for 3 sections for 5 students. So हर student के लिए I will have 3 bars for each of the section. और उसको मैं length will determine the magnitude, and I will have 5 sets of 3 bars each to represent the scores. Again, for me these are values in a table. I can write the score of the 5 students for each of the section और उसको table में भर सकता है. Then I can make calculations. यहाँ पे there is another one term that you should know, which is a cumulative bar chart. In a cumulative bar chart, we do not draw the bars separately. We draw the bars one over the other. So अगर मैं यही इसको cumulative bar chart बनाता हूँ and I'm drawing a bar for Saurabh, I will draw a bar of 36 height for subject 1. Over that bar, I will draw a height of 42 sorry, and over that I will draw a height of 28. This becomes a cumulative bar. We are not solving the question right now. Yeah. This becomes a cumulative bar for Saurabh, cumulative bar chart. So here every person will have one single bar. Obviously, the overall height of the bar will depend on the total scores. The higher the score, the higher the bar will be. ठीक है? तो जैसे ही मैंने बार चार्ट को देखा मुझे पता चल गया who is scoring more, who is scoring less. यहाँ पे दिख जाएगा किस सेक्शन में कम और ज्यादा स्कोर करा for each person, visually speaking. Then there is a chart which is called the percentage cumulative chart. In a percentage cumulative chart, what we do is we find out the percentage value for each score for each person. जैसे सौरभ है, सौरभ का स्कोर है 36, 42 और 28. So that means the total is 42 plus 20, 60, 70, 106. हाँ, तो मैं क्या करूँगा? सौरभ का पहले वाले में स्कोर कैलकुलेट करूँगा, दूसरे वाले में स्कोर परसेंटेज स्कोर कैलकुलेट करूँगा और तीसरे वाले में परसेंटेज स्कोर कैलकुलेट करूँगा. These percentage values I will stack one over the other for Saurabh. and therefore the total value will be 100%. Similarly, I'll do for other people as well. इस केस में क्या होगा? The length of the bar overall will be the same for everyone, total height. But comparison will not be possible because हम लोग को total उन लोग का नहीं पता है. So in a percentage bar chart, we will not compare values across bars. We will be doing more questions in the coming classes. जो I am Bangalore वाले questions है वो भी हम next class में discuss करेंगे. Right now I just want to spend a few minutes trying to draw a pie chart and how the data is represented in a pie chart. चलो जैसे ये वाला pie chart है. बोल रहा है the pie chart shows a breakup of automobile sales in 21 and 22. एक में percentage values लिखी है और एक में लिखा है degree values. Now my question is, how do you draw a pie chart? Now when you're trying to draw a pie chart will always be drawn based on the degree values. For example, suppose just to show you how I'm right. Suppose if I say Maruti is one company. For that, I have its sales in there 21, 22, 23, and 24. Similarly, there is another company, say TYT, उसकी भी same वो है sales numbers. This is suppose 50, 60, 70. And say 70. This is suppose 30, 40, 60 and 20. These sales are in rupees 1000. How do I represent this data on a pie chart is the question. Again, any chart at the end of the day can be converted into a table and from there it will be solved. Basically, table has the numbers, so every chart has to go to a table, and then I'll solve the questions. I might not explicitly draw the chart, write the numbers, but that is how the question will be solved. The question is, how do I draw a pie chart for this? And if a pie chart is given, how do I find out the numbers that are there? So a pie chart, if I have to draw here, I will draw one pie chart for each company. So Maruti gets a pie, Toyota gets a pie. I'm drawing a pie chart for Maruti. So I look at the total value, 70, 70, 142, 250. So I say total sales is 250. I am drawing the pie chart for each year basically. So in the first year it will be 50 out of 250. Now the thing is, this entire circle is 360 degree, which represents 250 sales. Out of that 250 sales, 50 is in 2021. So we'll find the corresponding angle. So I'll say 2021 is 50 out of 250 of the entire 360 degrees. This is 1 by 5. So 1 by 5 of 360 will be 72 degrees. So I'll draw baseline, from there I'll draw 72 degrees. This becomes A. Similarly, we calculate B. B will be 60 upon 250 into 360 degrees. So this will come out to 24 into 36. 12 144. It is 86.4 degrees. So from this line, I will draw an angle of 86.4 degrees. This will become B. Similarly, we will draw for C and we will draw for D as well. 70 upon 250, 70 upon 250. Now what happens is, when a pie chart is given to you, the pie chart would have values written in three types. One, it could have a degree value. In this case, what I do is I say the value for A is 72 degree out of 360. So 72 upon 360 into the total sales. This will give me the sales for A. I could also have data written in percentage. The pie chart will always be drawn basis degree, but then a percentage value is given. For example, for A it will be 50 upon 250 into 100. which is what 20%. हाँ, तो यहाँ पे 20% लिखा होगा, B के लिए 24% लिखा होगा, C और D के लिए 28% लिखा होगा, not degree but percent. Please understand the graph is drawn using the degree only. End में value percentage में लिख दी है, so percentage value I will convert it like I have been doing so far. A will be 20% of the total. This is something that was there in the IIM Bangalore chart as well. ठीक है? IIM Bangalore sample paper में this kind of a chart was also used, pie chart. The third representation for a pie chart is the values will be directly given to you, and if the values are directly given, they can also be used as it is, right? So very broadly speaking, this was the concept of data interpretation. In the coming class, we will do a few more questions on DI, and definitely in the next class that I have, we will cover all the questions that were there in the LRDI section of IIM Bangalore. That will also serve as a bit of a revision, and any doubts can be taken up there also, right? So over the next 2 days, I will strongly recommend that you practice questions on DI. And if there are any doubts also, we can take it up in the next session that we have, right? Any questions for today? Any questions for today? Yes. Absolutely, why not? CAGR. What I'm saying is, suppose the population of a town, I'm looking at different years, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, okay? In the first year, suppose it was 1000, then it became say 1100, then it became 1320, then it further became 1132, 1452. Suppose this is the population has gone from year 1 to year 4. मुझे पूछे what is the compound annual growth rate? I will treat it as a compound interest question, and I will say the principal that I had was 1000 rupees and the final amount is 1452. First year it increased by 10, then by 20, then by 10%. That is not important for me. I have to calculate the annual rate. So this becomes my principal, this becomes my amount. Number of time periods involved is 1 increase here, 1 increase here, 1 increase here. So N becomes 3, N or T becomes 3. And therefore I write amount is equal to principal into 1 plus R upon 100 raised to power 3. Simple compound interest का formula लिख दिया. जो R की value आएगी वो CAGR है. So the CAGR here will come out to about 12%. So basically 1000 increased by 12%. Then the new value increased by 12%. Then that value increased by 12%. अगर ऐसा होगा तो finally आपको 1452 वाली value मिल जाएगी. SAGR is additive. हर साल 20% ऐड होता गया. CAGR is multiplicative, so I multiply by 1 plus R upon 100 every year. Alright? And because मेरे को cube root निकालना नहीं आता, there is a limited chance that this question will be asked. You might be given a CAGR जिससे आपको value निकालो, that is possible. Is this okay now? Okay. SAGR में कुछ नहीं, SAGR में find out the growth rate divided by the number of years. So अगर मैं SAGR निकाल रहा हूँ यहाँ पे, so first of all I will find out the overall growth rate. Overall growth rate क्या है? 1452 minus 1000 upon 1000 into 100. ये growth rate आ गया, है ना? Which will be what? 45.2%. ये total growth rate है. ये growth rate है 3 time periods के लिए. So the annual average growth rate or SAGR will simply be 45.2 upon 3, which will come out to 15.07%. CAGR से कम आएगा, ठीक है? Perfect. चलो over the next 2 days please practice question on DI. DI is critical because again अगर एग्जाम में भी 2 सेट्स आ गए almost 30% of your paper will be this, right? DI might take time, and again I'm saying if 30% of my paper is DI questions, out of 60 minutes 30% is 18, so basically I have 9 minutes per set. 2-2.5 मिनट per question तो है आराम से. That is good enough to, क्योंकि देखो not all 4 questions or 5 questions will take time. तो कुछ होंगे इसमें कम टाइम लगे, इसमें ज्यादा टाइम लगेगा. तो अगर कम वाले टाइम वाले क्वेश्चन में टाइम बचा लिया, I might actually have 3-4 minutes for a lengthy question, which is more than sufficient. So you are sure of getting 8-9 questions. 5 questions from here, QA, 5 from arithmetic will take your attempt to 20, right? 5 or 6 questions, whatever. So important है, थोड़ी practice कर लो, नहीं होना भी चालू हो जाएगा. We'll continue this in the next class. I think until then, take care. Goodbye. I'll see you then.